Hello, everyone. Today we are in chapter 22 of the Gospel of Luke. We're just looking at the first 30 verses. And as we begin today's reading, we are reminded of the dilemma that is faced by the teachers of religious law and the lead priests. They have been trying desperately to find a way to eliminate Jesus, but they've been trying to do it in such a way that won't provoke an uprising amongst the crowd. And so they've tried to trick him with incriminating questions, but Jesus hasn't fallen into any of those traps. They're about to lose hope until we get to verse 3. Then Satan entered into Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12 disciples. And he went to the leading priests and the captains of the temple guard, to discuss the best way to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted, and they promised to give him money. So he agreed and began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus so they could arrest him when the crowds weren't around. There's something particularly disturbing about this scene to me. Judas Iscariot was one of the 12 disciples. He was chosen by Jesus Christ to follow him. He was trained by Jesus. He got to go preach for Jesus. He participated in healing people in Jesus' name. And he was front row for 3 years as he saw everything that Jesus did and heard everything that Jesus was about. The temptation here is to think that maybe Judas was somehow rotten to the core from the very beginning. But then why did Jesus choose him? You might respond, well, he needed to have him around because he was going to serve a purpose later. Maybe. Some would say that Judas was, in fact, a good guy, but that he was anxious to see Jesus step up into his glory, that he was still anticipating that military general type, and so he thought that somehow this betrayal would just force Jesus' hand. What the truth is, we're never really going to know. We're not going to understand Judas's motivation, at least not on this side of eternity. But there is something that we need to keep in mind, and that is to remember that good people who follow Jesus Christ will sometimes find their sights distracted, and they will lose their way along the path. As always, God works all things for good, but I just see this issue of Judas as a reminder to us that our commitment to Christ must never be taken for granted. The Apostle Peter actually had something to say about that later on in one of his letters. He wrote this: "Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And Peter knew what he was talking about because he would betray Jesus himself in his own way. Well, the stage is set for what's about to come. At the beginning of verse 7, we get to see Luke's account of the Last Supper as Jesus is preparing to share a meal that celebrates how God freed the people of Israel from slavery and bondage to the people of Egypt. And unbeknownst to the 12, Jesus is preparing himself to do the same thing, freeing the people he loves from sin and death, bondage to death. And so that's all coming together. And as this is happening, it's all happening in a place that we refer to as the upper room. And Jesus seems to have had the stage set for this well in advance. Somehow Jesus has arranged for the upper room to be available to them. He's even arranged for kind of a clever way for Peter and John to find the room in the first place. And it seems that as Luke is writing this, he's just wanting to emphasize the fact that Jesus is in complete control of everything. That's the important part here. That is the point. God is in control. Even as things are about to get very chaotic, God is still in control. Now, as you read on, we're going to get to hear the words of institution that we still use 2,000 years later as we gather around the bread and the wine to celebrate this meal that represents Christ's sacrifice for us. But it's the last part of today's reading that kind of captures my imagination. The disciples start arguing amongst themselves about, who's the best. And then Jesus interrupts at verse 25. Listen to this. Jesus told them, "In this world, the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you, it will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like a servant." The example of Jesus Christ is all about humble service. And that's what I'm going to walk away with today from today's reading. These three things that we have to keep our eyes on Jesus, that we have to trust that God is in control, and that true leadership is servant leadership. Have a great day, everyone. If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.